If you're watching this video and the algorithm has suggested this to you, you're probably early to this trend and you may not even realise it. So the trend is preparing for good times. So you may not have noticed that we are currently in hard times. So if you look around, families are breaking down, divorce rates are rising, people have many addictions. The food we're eating isn't real food, and there's a lot of poor quality food out there that's causing disease. There's war and money issues, right? So that sounds very doom and gloom. I'm a positive person, but if you look around, be perspicacious and observe. We're not exactly in the golden ages. Do you know what I mean? I would say this is hard times. We have the tendency to always think it's the best it's ever been, like we're at the cutting edge. Like, at no time in history has it been this good, but that's not the case. Life goes through cycles, and sometimes it's the dark ages, and then sometimes it's the golden ages. Do you know what I mean? So you got good times and bad, and we have a tendency, because we're like in the West, we think we're in developed countries, it's the best it's ever been, healthcare's the best it's ever been, and that isn't the case. Sometimes we go backwards and then go forwards again. So it's the same with seasons. If it was always summer, always progress, always good, winter inevitably comes to reset the balance, and that happens in society. So to explain this, there's the hard times cycle. So I'm not going to explain this very well, and it's quite a deep point, so you might want to check out Stefanio's book, Hard Times Create Strong Men. If you're a bit sensitive or a bit woke, then I wouldn't recommend reading that book, because you're probably not going to like it. But if you just want to get an idea of what I'm talking about the hard times cycle, just type in Stefanio hard times, and some of his Instagram or YouTube videos will explain it. The cycle goes like this: hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. And the cycle continues like that. And obviously it says hard times create strong men, and it's always men in the title, but this is just society. So this is men and women working together to go through this cycle. So if you think about it, so he says, and this isn't a Stefanio point, I think it's called The Fourth Turning, is the original book that he's referencing. It kind of says that life goes, or society goes, in 80-year cycles, because 80 years is the average lifespan. So what somebody learns in a life gets forgotten after 80 years. You know, the old person in a nursing home dies, and then all of their lessons get forgotten, and then the next generation restart the cycle and make all the same mistakes again. That's why history repeats itself. So just as one person, you know, like veterans that have experienced war, just as they die, so they've got the memory of war, nobody wants to go through that again while they're alive, and it's very clear, like everybody knows that was bad, and we can ask grandpa like how bad it was. And then when they die, everyone's forgotten how bad war is, and we're susceptible to repeat it again. So unless you've got that person who can anchor the generation and say, look, you don't want to go to war, this is what it was like, I can tell you firsthand, it's not good. Unless you've got that person, you're going to repeat it. So that's why it's 80-year cycles, because 80 years is the average lifespan. So all the lessons that get learnt in a life get forgotten and relearnt. And that gets broken down into 20-year cycles. So these cycles, so you've got 20, 40 and 80. And it's just due to the development. So from 0 to 20 is like your first stage of development. Then from 20 to 40 is your next stage of development. And then from 40 to 80, they say the average man learns all of his lessons by 40. From 40 to 80, you don't really learn anything else. You just repeat or reconfirm what you already know. So that's where the cycles come from. And they're always punctuated by a crisis. So check out The Fourth Turning, will explain, that's quite a deep book, but that'll explain the signposts of the cycle. but they're always punctuated by war or a big crisis. And at the moment we've got wars going on, we've got disease as caused by lifestyle choices. So the food, I think the food is causing disease. Well, it is. If you look at Weston A. Price's Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, he basically discovered that Western societies had perfectly designed the worst diet. Go to any other tribe or indigenous population and they're all healthier than we are. So as a Western society that's supposed to be on the cutting edge and at the forefront of science and development, we've designed a diet of processed foods, sugar and non-foods that create disease. So that's one way that it's hard times. And then we had that flu that I'm not going to mention the name of because I don't think YouTube likes it, but that shut down the economy. And I would argue prior to that, there was a mental health crisis going on anyway, and that just made it 10 times worse and brought it to the surface. So all of those examples are to say we're in hard times. And just ask yourself in your life, are you the happiest, healthiest, wealthiest, most abundant, most satisfying relationships? Do you know what I mean? Is it the best it's ever been in your experience? Or are there areas that you lack? Sort of, it's all love. I believe it all comes down to love. So is there areas where you lack love in your life? If so, it's probably hard times. So if you think about it, in hard times, you're either not going to survive or you're going to be forced to grow, and that produces strong outcomes. So if you're in a hard situation, whatever it may be, so take me for example, when I was overweight, and I talk a lot about weight loss on this channel, so that might be relatable. When I was overweight, being overweight is hard. If it wasn't, everyone would be overweight and be happy about it, but it's hard to be overweight and it's not enjoyable. Now you've got two choices. You can either continue to be overweight, and that is a weak outcome, or the hard times is going to force you to learn how to lose weight and improve your health. Same with anyone with health issues. It's the hard time that forces you to create a strong outcome. And the same is true for good times. In good times we get complacent and we rest on our laurels and we tend to become weaker. You know, it's good, I don't need to do the hard thing. But hard times forces you to grow. So that's why the cycle goes in that order. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times. So where are we at on that cycle? We are in hard times create strong men. Because I've personally experienced hard times. And I know just for myself that I'm stronger because of it. And when you're strong, you can create a better situation. So that's creating good times. So the weak man can't do that. So this isn't you're never going to know exactly where you are in the cycle. There's no definitive point that you're at. It's a fluid movement, but it goes in that order. But I would argue we're in hard times create strong men. So I anticipate that 2030 to 2050 will be strong men create good times. So you can expect, if it's hard now, you can expect it to be good. I've got this theory that the 30s, you know, like they say the swinging 60s, the 60s and 70s was good times off the back of it. But then it was the good times of the 60s and 70s that created hard times, that created weak men and hard times. So I hope I'm doing this point justice, but I anticipate anyway, we've had hard times. 2019 is a year we can all remember as being a hard time, right? But I believe there was a mental health hard time prior to that, around 2010. That's when I experienced severe, difficult mental health times. So I would say hard times was 2010 and 2020, right? So that's 20 years. And then if you give it 10 years to transition over into the next phase, I would say 2030 to 2050 is going to be good times. Because the men that became strong from the hard times have created a situation where that can come into play. So trends and cycles move fast without clear boundaries. So like I said, there's no definitive, you're never going to know exactly where you are in a cycle. But the other thing to remember is they move fast. So I'll just give you a different analogy, right? In my experience, depression is a result. This is sometimes how depression forms, right? So you have an event in your life, a traumatic experience. Now you can react to that traumatic experience in one of two ways. You can either allow it to affect your mood. You can allow it to affect your mood, and then a mood sustained for long enough becomes depression, and then depression sustained for long enough just becomes your character. So you had a traumatic event, you responded to it by letting it make you sad and affecting your mood. A mood sustained for long enough becomes depression, and then depression becomes who you are. You identify with it. And it was that one single event in the beginning that caused it. So you get stuck in time and you don't move with the times, right? Whereas another option is you have a traumatic event, you face it and deal with it. It affects your mood for a short period of time, you're sad, and then you go back to normal. You don't get depressed and your character stays happy and joyful, no depression. And you update, because that one event was bad, but a year later you might have a really good event that's happy and you've got to be joyful for, but if you're still attached to that event from a year ago, you're depressed and you can't see it and you're stuck in time, and then you don't notice the good events in your life. So I'll give you an example of this. When I go to the sauna, you speak to people in the sauna, and there's this guy, I call him Keto Dan, right? He's always, all he ever talks about is the ketogenic diet. Low carbs, keto is going to have all these health benefits. And he talks about it like nobody knows about it, right? And I remember when I first learnt about keto, and it was a trend that I was quite early to, so I would speak to my family and friends and they'd be like, nah, that's not a normal way of eating. And it's when you're too new, people don't understand. So Keto Dan was early to the keto diet. But what he doesn't realise is trends come in and become popular and common knowledge. So in the beginning he was telling people about the keto diet and they're like, oh wow, that sounds different and like something I've never heard of. But then after a while, even me, I was fairly new to it when he was talking about it, so it was fresh. Then after a while, he's telling like old grannies that are in the sauna and they know about it. And when your barber and then a granny down the road knows about keto diet, it's no longer a trend, it's just common knowledge. Do you know what I mean? So he didn't move with the times, and he probably, I haven't seen him in a while, but he's probably still talking about the keto diet when there are newer things which I think I can normally spot trends before they come in, and there are newer things. So for example, raw milk. I think the demand for raw milk is going to increase over the next 5 years, just in my opinion. But he'll probably not, he's still talking about keto. Everyone knows about keto, but raw milk is fairly new. And another thing is hyperbaric chambers. I anticipate hyperbaric chambers becoming more popular, or at least some form of oxygen therapy. Maybe the masks breathing pure oxygen out of a tank. Because breath work and adding oxygen to the body we know is beneficial. But when I told him about Wim Hof and I was like talking about breath work, he didn't want to know because it's a trend that had already been and gone. Everybody got on the cold showers and the Wim Hof, and he didn't want to hear about it because it seemed old and not new. And then he's trying to talk about keto, but what he didn't realise is that's old and not new anymore. And the raw milk and the hyperbaric chamber and whatever comes next, eating single ingredient foods, is the new trend. So trends come, you think you're new to something, and before you know it, everybody knows about it. So he's telling me about the ketogenic diet and is still eating non-organic processed low quality foods. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, you don't want to get stuck in an old trend thinking that you're at the cutting edge when everybody else has already adopted it. So what does good times look like? Good times, in my opinion, looks like people eating real food that's all organic. So if you take non-organic food, right, for example, non-organic food is a joke. The fact that you can have one product that has pesticides and chemicals that are known to be harmful and carcinogenic sprayed all over it, and then you're going to eat that, and that's acceptable, and then there is an alternative on the shelf next to it that's a little bit more expensive, that's not organic, that's grown in a way that doesn't have these chemicals, there shouldn't be a choice. There shouldn't be two options. The non-organic one just shouldn't be a viable product. So I did hear one way that they use to spray to manage certain insects, right? This is an insecticide. You've got your crop and insects would normally eat it, and that's a problem for the farmer. So what they were doing was, or what they currently do, this is an insecticide, they spray a chemical that changes the hormone balance in the insects to make them, it essentially turns them infertile, right? And that causes them not to reproduce, and then that insect isn't a problem for that crop anymore. The problem is, the same pathways that are in the insects, I don't know the full science on this, you do want to do your own research, but it made sense to me. The same pathways that are in that insect we have in our endocrine system and our hormone system that regulate our fertility, right? And our ability to reproduce. So you're spraying a chemical on a crop that we're going to eat that turns insects infertile, and then we eat that. And the argument is insects are very small and it needs a very minute amount of this chemical and this insecticide. But I think we've got fertility dropping, and I think that something's causing that. And the alternative is farm organically, and I don't really think there's much of a, that should take you 2 seconds to think, well, would I rather have a food source that's covered in chemicals or one that isn't? There shouldn't be a choice, it should just be organic as far as I'm concerned. So good times looks like real food. We're eating hyper processed food as well, which isn't healthy, and we know it causes disease. So good times is going to have healthier people. It's going to see strong families with less divorce and more marriages. So divorce rates are extremely high, and families aren't staying together. There's a breakup of the family. I think there'll be a return to belief or religion. Doesn't have to be religion, but it has to be something that you believe in, not money and it's this selfish aspect of society now. Capitalism, there's nothing wrong with capitalism, but it's very selfish and it's not community based. So it'll be a return to the community, and religion or a belief system allows opportunity for community. So then my next point was strong communities. So we've kind of outsourced our social lives onto social media, but I think that will return back to in-person, real-life tribes and communities. Birth rates and fertility will increase, because at the moment in hard times, that's an issue. Elon Musk is saying people aren't having enough kids. And then we'll have times of peace and no war. So my point was, you're probably preparing for good times without even knowing it. You're ahead of the trend. So what does that look like? It looks like doing the habits that you're going to do in good times anyway. So hard time habits in comparison to good time habits. So a hard time habit would be scrolling on Instagram, and that's antisocial. The good time habit would be connecting with people in real life in small communities. So a bad time habit would be drinking Monster Energy, eating processed food, getting avoidable lifestyle diseases from a lack of exercise, sunlight, nutrition, water, hydration. The good time equivalent would be eating real single ingredient, minimally processed, organic, locally sourced foods. So one is a hyper processed non-food with chemicals in it, and the other is a locally sourced real food. And then on the relationship side of things, you've got people at the moment sleeping around and relationships breaking down, and the opposite would be strong marriages with a married couple and kids. Do you know what I mean? That's your two options, as far as I can see. So this is just how I see it. And you've got to ask yourself, which time is harder to live in? One where you're addicted to social media, sugar, and bad relationships, or one where you've got a strong connection with your community, you're eating healthy foods, you feel strong and powerful, and you've got a good family, a committed wife and children. Do you know what I mean? So how are you preparing for this? You do it by doing this, you create the reality, and if everybody did it, then good times would be inevitable. So you have to do it before it's a thing. So let me try and explain. So food choice is supply and demand. The more people eat real food, the more available they will become. They only care about profit. Right, so you might think, in this case, the habit precedes the outcome. You might think, well, I'll buy organic food when I can afford it and when the price comes down and when it's more available in store. Or I'll buy raw milk when my local supermarket stocks it. But that isn't how you do it. For example, for me, raw milk is something I want to implement, and I can't buy it. I've asked the 2 dairy farms on the island. I live on a fairly small island, so we've got 2 dairy farms, as far as I know. I've asked both of them, they won't sell me raw milk. The closest place to get raw milk, I've got to get a boat to get it, right? But I've found a company that will post it to me. So I could say I'll buy raw milk when the shop round the corner stocks it, and the shop round the corner stocks something close. It's pasteurised but not homogenised, and I'm looking for a milk that is not pasteurised and not homogenised. So I could say, well, I'll get the not homogenised one because it's halfway there, and I'll keep buying that until they stock it. But I'm not showing them that there's a demand for the milk I want. If I stop buying milk from that shop and all of my friends stop buying milk from that shop and we all buy it from this raw dairy farm, that raw dairy farm is going to have to increase production to supply our demand. And the shop round the corner is going to have all this milk on the shelves that isn't selling because we've all gone to buy raw milk. And they're going to say, well, we can either sell no milk or we can replace it with the raw milk that these people are buying. Shops only care about profit, and they're very smart with this. So, for example, there was dried mango, right? There's 2 options at my local shop: organic dried mango and normal dried mango. The normal dried mango, there was a big box of it. Organic, there was like a small box because less people buy it. Well, my friend told me about it. I've told a few friends about it, and now every time we go there, we buy all of the organic dried mango because it's a single ingredient. The other one has added ingredients, and we're about single ingredient diets. So we keep emptying out the shelf of this dried mango. It's a computer system, especially at this shop because it's a massive supermarket. The computer will calibrate and go, right, you need to double the amount of dried mango, organic dried mango, and maybe decrease the amount of normal dried mango because people don't want it. The demand for the organic stuff is higher. And this has happened with plant-based alternatives to meat. They came in massively popular, and I'm not against a vegan diet, but I am against hyper-processed foods, and a lot of these meat alternatives are hyper-processed. If you're going to be vegan, just eat real plants, do you know what I mean? So I saw these shelves, extra sections in the supermarket dedicated to plant-based processed foods, and they was like, the shelves are full. And then they would end up on the reduced section because nobody was buying them, and now those sections are getting smaller, and the traditional meat and vegetable is like the same size. So if nobody is demanding your product, you'll stop selling it. So, right, that was a bit long-winded, but yeah, you don't wait for them to stock organic food. You have to get it first. So you might say, well, my shop doesn't sell the organic food. Well, you have to stop buying the alternative and source it from somewhere else in the meantime. Like, for example, my local supermarket sells raw cheese, right? So I'll buy that all the time because I'm telling them, they say vote with your dollar, don't they? Or vote with your pound. I'm telling them raw cheese is good. Now, if everybody stopped buying normal cheese and only the cheese that sold was raw cheese, they would stop stocking the other cheese, or they would stock a very small amount of it and just sell raw cheese. So you can influence, like 90% of the food in local supermarkets isn't real food, but people keep buying them. So when people stop buying them, and again, this is, you're early to the trend, so you're probably reducing the amount of processed foods you buy and increasing the amount of real foods, and that will influence the outcome. And you have to get creative. Like for me, with the milk, the raw dairy, it's hard to find. You've got to work out a way of getting it. I was considering going over on the boat, buying it in bulk and putting it in a freezer. Do you know what I mean? That's a bit more tricky than just going to the local shop, but that's what you have to do. And if enough people do that, that's what creates... So that's hard times, isn't it? Me having to go on a boat and do this mission to get some raw milk is hard times. But that creates strong men, creates good times. So if I do that for long enough, and enough of my friends do that for long enough, we'll influence the local supermarkets to start stocking raw milk, and now everyone can drink raw milk and we're all a lot healthier. So that's how it works. But this isn't just with that, this is with all aspects of life. So yeah. So you do habits for the life and reality you want, not the one you've currently got. You don't wait until good times to act accordingly. So you don't think when they start stocking raw milk, I'll buy raw milk. I think I've done the raw milk analogy. I think you get it. So you fake it until you make it, and reality will catch up. If you do the good times thing for long enough, reality will adjust. And that's how good times come about. It's if enough strong men, and it doesn't take many, but if enough strong men act in a certain way, reality recalibrates for it. So I did some deep journaling on why I started this making YouTube videos, right? And I came up with 3 reasons. The first one is to pass my lessons on to my kids. So I've experienced hard times, and I guess you could say trauma, and I've had to learn lessons from that. And it seemed to me like it would be a waste if my kids had to go through the same thing and experience the same thing. And like I said, with the 80 years, normally it's 80 years for a lifespan, and then you forget all of the lessons and you have to go again. But I would rather have some sort of documentation of what I've learned. So at least when my children are going through it, they can go, this is what to expect. Like my friend, when he advised me on relationships, the fact that he'd done it, human experiences are all very similar. So the fact that he'd gone through it, I was like, it makes it a lot easier. And I know that I'm not going to be around forever. I anticipate having a long and healthy life, and I'll be here to raise my kids. But if anything happens, at least there's some sort of a record that can help them, and they can work it out. So number 2, this is probably going to come as a surprise, but to improve my speech and assess myself. So I found my ability to speak, unless it's practice, I think it goes down. So I was like mumbling, and my speech wasn't very good. And even now, I'm very new to YouTube and making YouTube videos. And even now, I can't articulate myself as good as I would like to. And the more I do this, the better I'll get at it. And the only way you can do it is you can say, in conversations I'll try and speak better, but you never do. It doesn't quite work like that. You have to do it where people are going to judge you and where you have an opportunity to assess it. So that was my second reason for doing YouTube, is to improve the ability to communicate. In the Bible it says, in the beginning was the Word. And just that one sentence I think is very powerful. The ability to communicate and speak. Speaking words is a powerful skill, and you want to get good at it. Speaking is essentially me being able to tell you what's in my consciousness and put it into your consciousness. So speaking is a form, what's it called? Telepathy. When you're telepathic, you can communicate through your mind. Well, speaking is essentially that. I can take what's in my mind, put it in your mind through some invisible sound waves, right? So that's a bit deep. It's just speaking. But the opposite of that is if I can't speak correctly and get my point across, I'm like isolated, aren't I? I can't communicate with anyone. So the better you can communicate, I think your life improves to the degree that you can improve communication as a skill. And then the third reason I started making YouTube videos was I thought it might have been of benefit to people. So some of the things and ideas I've been implementing, and these aren't all my ideas, I've like copied what I see other people doing and what works for them. And that was my motivation for doing the videos, because I've copied, say, Paul Saladino, his diet, and it was very beneficial to me. And if he didn't make that video, I wouldn't have known about it. So things I've implemented have improved my life, and they've improved countless people's lives that I talk to. So I've got my mum on a certain diet, my dad's doing it, my brother's doing it. A lot of my friends have implemented a lot of the things I talk about, and it has a positive impact. So I did fully expect to get 3 views per video forever on this YouTube channel, and I'm surprised at the amount of views. Well, I am surprised and I'm not as well, because I know it's important what we're talking about. But I thought I'll probably get 3 views. The algorithm's not going to push some bearded guy in a forest, do you know what I mean? But it's there for my kids. I'll get better at speaking. Win-win. But it is beneficial to people, and your comments, I've been reading the comments on some of my videos. I've been doing this for about, I think I've got 40 videos up at this point, and I'm doing a video a day so that I can learn quickly what's working and what isn't, and hone my skills of speaking. So I got a good idea. And some of the comments, a lot of other people share my experience, and they've had benefits from the things I talk about. So it is of value to people. So some of the comments, like I did a relationship video, and for men, at least that's my experience, I was going through what I described as the black hole. I'm getting comments from other men saying, this video came at the perfect time, thank you for making the video. And it's like, yeah, well, the pain that you feel when you're black holing, like what I described in that video, is almost unbearable. So if somebody can see a video of me saying, oh yeah, I've just been through this and this is to be expected, it makes it a whole lot easier. So that is a benefit. I just didn't know whether YouTube would push it to the people that it's relevant to, because what I'm talking about seems quite niche. And then the food, when I talk about a real food diet, the amount of comments I'm getting, they read like testimonials. They're like, and they're not short comments. These are paragraphs. So this shows how important it is to people, and how much of an impact it's having on people's lives. And I'm not saying what I'm saying is doing it. These are people that have already implemented what I'm saying. So I'm just basically confirming what they already know. And I think that's what wisdom is. You never really learn anything new. You just confirm what life has already taught you. But I'm getting comments saying, I had this health issue and I've been able to fix all of my symptoms. People are essentially curing diseases with the diets we're talking about. And that's no small, that's no small point. That is quite significant. And it's having a massive impact on people's lives. Like, I mean, I'll try and put up some of the comments. So anyway, this has given me more conviction about what I'm speaking about, and give me a drive to spread the message and hone my skills to do that better, and play my part in bringing about good times. And this is what we're doing, like with this, with these videos. There is kind of an us versus them situation. There is somebody who is producing poor quality processed foods that cause disease, right? The food industry. And then there's us that are going, wait a minute, I get these symptoms and these diseases from eating those foods. What if I try this other thing? And then we have positive outcomes and it improves all of our, our health. And that brings about good times. So the more of us that do that, there'll be nobody eating the food industry foods anymore. Everyone will just be on real foods and it's good times and we're all happy and healthy. So my actionable step for you is, I'm speaking my truth. And I've had this in my head for a while. I've been doing my research and I've been learning what works for me. And you're doing the same by commenting on the videos and saying, oh yeah, I had this issue and this is how I've solved it and this is the benefits, or this is what didn't work and this is what did. You're speaking your truth. And the more people do that, that's how you transition from hard times. Hard times is having an autoimmune disease, like a lot of the people are commenting. Good times is not having an autoimmune disease. And the way you transition is by spreading information. So when you've got an us versus them situation, it's almost like breakaway communities. So you got the majority of people, me included and probably you, was eating food industry foods. That's community number one, that's the norm, and that is society. You realise that's not working, and then you form a breakaway community, which is you first on your own adopt real foods. Then you tell your mate about it and it benefits him, and then you tell another friend and it benefits her, and now you've got a little breakaway community of people that aren't eating food industry foods, they're eating real foods. And then because when it works you want to share it like I am now, that community becomes bigger, and then it's no longer the breakaway, it is just society. And then food industry will move over here and sell nothing but real foods. And now you've gone from hard times to good times. And again, I speak about food because that's an obvious point, but this can happen in every area. So again, relationships. If relationships they're a bit weird in the West at the moment, I've got to be honest. Relationships aren't great. And then you've got over here strong families and committed husbands and wives. Well, if you and all your friends start doing this and seek that out, it might be going to a different country where traditions are a little bit more in place. Eventually, this won't be the norm anymore, and it transitions back and forth, like I say, in 20, 40 and 80 year cycles. So it's every area of life. Belief, health, wealth and relationships. People seem to be less religious in the West. Well, if you start talking about religion and belief systems, and then all your friends do, then you go from nobody's religious to everyone is. And again, that's swung back and forth. Belief, health. Everyone's overweight. The majority of people are, I think it's 60%, so that's a majority of people are overweight. Diabetes, cancer, diseases are on the rise. Well, if you start adopting lifestyle choices that improve that, now you're going to transition. Belief, health, wealth, relationships. Money is a big one. That is going to be, topic for a different discussion. Relationships, again, we've talked about. So yeah, speak your truth. Write it in the comments. Make YouTube videos if you feel comfortable doing that. Or even if you don't. I didn't feel comfortable making YouTube videos in the beginning, but I had to, push through that. So, bit of a deep one today, but let me know what you think. Did I just ramble a load of rubbish for 40 minutes? I don't know. Obviously I get some negative comments and I just think they're funny. You're not going to appeal to everyone, or not everyone's going to agree with you, but a lot of people are. I think it's like 70-30 at the moment. 70% of people are finding value in what I'm saying. And it's not what I'm saying, it's just the truth as I see it. So that's all I'm doing. I'm speaking the truth to the best of my ability, and as I learn more, my truth and what I see to be true will change, and I will make mistakes, and there'll be things that I'll have to say, oh yeah, I didn't realise this, but this is my updated version. So anyway, hope that helps. and keep commenting. Like, it's good to see you guys benefiting from certain information. Have a good day, see you tomorrow. I suppose I could have saved you 45 minutes and just said, be the change you want to see in the world. But, oh well. See you later.